Splashdown.
Sometimes the stars just align perfectly, and this is one of those days. Today, we have with us in the studio the 3 Swedes that has been to space. So let's go there and listen in on Christer Fuglesang, Jessica Meir, and Marcus Wandt as they talk about their 3 different backgrounds, 3 different rockets, and their 3 different missions to the ISS.
I mean, we all went to ISS, very different. Like, you were half a year or so. Yeah. But we went with 3 different vehicles.
Yeah, that's true.
And to compare the Dragon crew with the Soyuz with the shuttle, fantastic. I mean, the shuttle was such a benign vehicle to fly with, particularly coming back. I mean, how is it coming back with a capsule and parachute?
I think the capsule, well, you know, as they say in Russia, the Mягкая посадка, the soft landing. Yeah. And I actually thought that it was quite soft. I think most people describe it as a small car crash.
Yeah, that's what I read.
But I felt like maybe because I was expecting more, or maybe also because I was really well fastened down. You know, you have to keep tightening your seatbelts as you go, and you know, and maybe also because I'm smaller and kind of fit in the seat well. So I didn't think it was so. Yeah, I think it was the hard part is then we actually rolled. So then you just get back to gravity after 7 months. We rolled over. So then I was hanging upside down like this.
Not so
and that doesn't feel very good.
No.
But I always thought that must be easier than landing in the water. So
landing in the water, actually, so when it comes to the bang, the sound of the bang was quite high. It was it was not a splash, it was more a bang. Yeah. But the feeling was not that. You could feel it, but it was not super strong. But then no rolling, of course, but still a lot of bobbing. It was the old sea, so it was not very windy at the time, but there were still a lot of seas. So you could see everything was going, and you're in there, I don't know, to the egress for about 40 minutes.
You get seasick in there.
That's a real risk. But and you know the windows they're not really shard, but they're not very transparent either. But you could see the horizon. I think on Soyuz they crack them out, right, to pop the windows so you get it clear again. Here you do not do that, but you have I could still see the horizons sometimes. So I could see that we're stable
that
1,
helps,
so we're
right?
heads up. Compared to if we're stable 2, they would be heads down.
That would not be so nice.
I think so. Yeah, and no, but it worked out really nice. And also very well strapped in, right? So it's not a movement there.
You explained something yesterday, which I did not felt. I did not feel, and it was easy. During the launch, and you said you could feel the G-forces. Of course, we felt the G-force. But you felt that the speed was going up then.
Yeah.
My guess is that because you are a fighter pilot and you kind of probably associate acceleration to increasing speed.
Yes,
because I had no feeling like, increasing speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was unexpected, but very strong. And I think exactly as I say, I'm used to pushing the throttle forward and feeling the acceleration in x-axis and how that accumulates integrates up to a speed. And you know that the feeling right now is 300 knots, 400 knots, 500 knots.
Yeah, and the vehicle will break soon.
No, exactly. And what was different in the aircraft. Right? You have this strong acceleration at first, and then the acceleration comes off, and then it meets an equilibrium where you're at your max speed. But here, the acceleration just kept going and kept increasing, right? More and more Gs. So that was I did not expect that feeling of accumulated velocity, which was very strong without seeing out. And that was a fantastic feeling.
Yeah. The other difference is that you can see, right? I mean, Soyuz is covered by the shroud, so you can actually see the launch complex. You can see outside in Florida, right?
Yeah, and you...
and I was sitting downstairs. I didn't see anything from the shuttle.
No, that's right. I have a window at my feet, so I could actually see out. But on the other hand, fairly quickly, we get up and you can only see sky or clouds. Mm-hmm. So it's not... coming back, though, in the re-entry, before the plasma starts building, it was still a quite low altitude, having almost 8 kilometers per second. So you could really see Earth passing by super fast. Didn't really expect to see that clear either. And at that point, it was difficult since we didn't have there was a slowing down, right? So and at that point we hadn't started slowing down. So that was more difficult to feel how fast it was going, like to feel that. And then when you saw it, so it kind of more looked like someone had started spinning the Earth real fast because it just passed like this. So it was pretty cool.
That's what I'm jealous of, I think, the most is the recency of it, because I remember when I was on the space station thinking this eventually will probably feel like a dream. And it does pretty quickly because you're just so used to everything on Earth.
Yeah.
And even though, especially after that long, almost 7 months, you feel like everything is completely natural and this is your new home.
Yeah.
But then when you come back, of course, you've spent much more time on the Earth. So it quickly kind of replaces that, and then it feels like it never happened. I feel that way still sometimes. Like, did that actually happen? Or was it just a dream? So you still have it, I think, fresh enough in your memory that So you have to hold on to that.
Yeah, I will try to hold on. So I deliberately tried to connect the day before, getting the spacesuit on, getting into the vehicle, feeling the launch, getting on space and doing docking, and then jump to the end and do the same thing, just exactly to connect those two realities, because it felt like two parallel realities when coming back. But I'm trying to connect them to make a flow so the brain just doesn't confuse it to be a dream. That's what I'm trying to do, yeah.
Right. So did you, when you had the extra days, how many extra days did you have? 3 or something?
4 extra days, right?
So did they?
Five. Actually more. Yeah, because the phasing was so long. So we were up more than 21 days instead of about 15 days, probably what we was expecting if we had short phasings.
Right.
Yeah, so it was that's a week more.
Bonus.
It's great, yeah.
I don't know if ESA has to pay extra for this.
Did you get to do some of your own things then, or did they have a plan for those days of still filling your schedule?
I got to do some of my own list. I had a list, right, of things I wanted to do, and well, of course, we did more of the science and the maintenance started to fill the list, or the days, but still, I had more time, so I could go more to the cupola and look outside, take the pictures I hadn't taken, and I could still be up there taking pictures, definitely.
Yeah, of course.
And and do some experimenting with the floating a little bit more and all the microgravity stuff. So that was great to get a little bit more time for reflection and absorbing the reality in space.
I always wanted to spend an entire orbit in the cupola, and I never did it. I never was able to have enough time to.
That is exactly one of the things I did. Yes.
Perfect.
Well, you did, because you told me you did what I did towards the end. I started to cheat with sleep. Okay, nothing really serious left to do, and I want to, utilize all the time was up there and all that. I wasn't as you was, but both my flights got at least 1 day extra, maybe even 2 days once, and then we were on the shuttle. We just floating there.
Right, you had a lot more space.
Yeah, but we did have some work because it was always hoping that, okay, you will land tomorrow. And this was a lot of job to do in the shuttle to kind of transform it from a space station, more or less, to a vehicle you could land with. I was several hours for it. And then you've done that and say, well, sorry guys, the weather is bad, we have to wait today. Then you have to do it worse and then do it again. So it wasn't completely boring. No. Also, so funny. Yesterday at the university, guess what was the first question? What do you think? The typical questions.
How do you go to the bathroom in space?
Exactly.
Very important to be able to do, so I guess that's why I asked. Yeah.
It's so
every time.
funny.
Every time.
Yeah. Typical the first is, how was it? And then you already talked about it. And then the next one, how was the toilet? That was so fun.
What were the 2 extra days? So you had 2 full days after undocking, right?
After undocking,
so
2 full days in the Dragon. That was actually I liked it. I mean, when that happened, 47 hours of phasing, which means more than 50 hours in total in Dragon, right? To get into the spacesuit, do the pressure checks, and then also the time on ground. But I saw it as bonus time in space. That's great. We have windows, so I could just float around and look in. And the Dragon is, especially when you're in microgravity, is not that small. It's almost 10 cubic meters.
You need less space in space.
Yeah, exactly. So you can just utilize those corners better and over the cargo and look outside, take pictures, and continue to review things and make observations, which was great. So I didn't mind those extra hours. No, and it was very different. The first undocking was supposed to be 9 hours phasing.
Right.
The backup day was 4 hours, but then of course none of those happened, and then we pushed several days, and then the phasing came up to be 47 hours.
Were you in spacesuit for undocking and docking, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. But you didn't stay in the spacesuit for 47 hours?
We did not, no. So about less than half an hour after undocking, we get out of the suit.
Because that's the same in Soyuz, right? Well, the Soyuz goes so fast back, so you go in the spacesuit and then you're in the spacesuit all the time, right?
Right.
Whereas in the shuttle, you never had a spacesuit for the docking and undocking. It was just launch and...
That's changed really since then. We require it of all the vehicles, just in case.
Yeah, but Soyuz had it already at that time.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So yeah, I know. I mean, there's been 2 fatal accidents, which at least one of them was clearly could have survived. I mean, the second Soyuz accident in '71 when they, the valve opened up when they were before they came into the atmosphere, and then they reintroduced the spacesuits.
Right.
Yeah. And the shuttle, they didn't have spacesuits in the beginning, but after Challenger, they thought, well, at least they could save in some scenarios.
Yeah. Probably give you a little bit more time.
Yeah.
It's an extra layer of protection. Also provides some cooling in the re-entry and the flow of gas in there, so it's pretty good. Yeah.
How are my friends?
Very good.
Yeah.
It was good. Everything worked out so nicely up there. They were great receiving us, and then we integrated in awesome ways. After a while, it felt like a full integrated crew, which was fantastic.
Like a family,
and
right?
all, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're looking forward to coming home.
Yeah, I think so. Well, both, I guess.
Yeah.
Because actually, I shouldn't say that, because maybe I got the feeling that you never can get enough of it, right? So, parts of the day, anyway. Yeah.
I wasn't ready to leave even after 205 days.
Yeah,
I think most people usually feel like after 6 months they're kind of ready.
Yeah.
They still are having a great time, but they're also kind of ready to come back to Earth. But I was not ready.
I think it probably also has to do with psychology. I mean, you go up there for 6 months or 7 months, and then you put that in your brain cancer, so then you feel ready when times comes. So.
Yeah, I think so as well. If you go up and know you're only going to be a few days, or if you're going to be a month, or that's all what you're set for, right? So that will definitely determine whether you feel like it's time to go or not. I guess so, because we talked about it when we were leaving as well. It seemed like most of the crew like, no, but it's time to go. Even though I think everyone else, and now you can speak for myself, I would definitely have stayed for a much longer time, no problem, because it felt like after a little bit more than a week, maybe, the feeling started to plateau when it came to adaptation and knowing where to go in the station and getting the flow, the routines and all that. And I felt like, and when you get that feeling, when the learning curve is starting to flatten, then you feel comfort, like, okay, I can stay here, no problem. So it was nice to be there long enough to get that feeling.
Yeah.
Any question from Astronomisk Ungdom?
Yeah, so you're people with very different backgrounds, even though you're all astronauts. So I'm curious as to what parts of your training or job on the space station did you find personally most interesting or engaging or just fun? Like what jobs or tasks to learn did you find most interesting?
It's difficult to say what's most interesting because they're interesting for several different ways. So the research, for instance, feels very interesting to me. First, I learn things about it myself, especially if I'm maybe not especially, but if I'm also the subject to research, where you do medical research or observation of how you react to microgravity, and then also some of the tech demonstrations are really interesting. But then I also like maintenance, for instance, to pick things apart and change something out and make sure that the station is still running. That feels important as well in another way. And I like using tools and tinkering with stuff. So that was also very rewarding. And then the outreach, calling down to Earth and talk to kids, asking all these awesome questions that I had myself also, and be able to get that question and then just try it out in the moment. Like, how is it if you just lift your legs? Well, it's actually like this. So I'm moving a little bit up and down at the same time and around my center of gravity, which was also amazing. So it's hard to single one thing out. And that's the feeling I had throughout. It was never boring at all. And it was actually even only getting equipment, you have to float over or just fly over, push yourself and get something, and then maybe you do a somersault on the way. And so it's just pure fun.
Yeah, I think Marcus answered it well. I think one of the best parts about our job in space or even here on Earth is that we're doing different things all the time. So you're never really bored, and it's never just sitting in an office at a computer. It's all very active. We're doing science one day, spacewalks another day, fixing things another day. So that's the part that appeals to me the most. But I think if I had to pick one favorite, it would be the spacewalks. I got to do 3 spacewalks, and as you know, that really it's a different feeling because you're out, in your own little mini self-contained spacecraft, and the view is different, and we spend a lot of time training to do that. So I think that's probably my favorite. But of course, as a scientist, it was very rewarding to be, like Marcus was saying, you're the subject up there, you're contributing to this incredible data set for all the scientists back on the ground. And I think like that, like all the things that we do, it comes with a great deal of responsibility too. You feel, how fortunate you are to be the one that's up there, and you don't want to make a mistake. You want to make sure that you get everything accomplished, so that you can help out with the data set on the ground, with the operations on the ground as well.
Yeah, well, spacewalk's number one. I fully agree with you. But and the funny thing,
next time.
Next time it's, I mean, the funny thing, I'm in the background. I'm a scientist like Jessica, but I didn't go there as a scientist. I went there as a construction worker, basically. Helped me to build a space station. Although I managed to do a little bit of science related to my background, which is particle physics related to kind of the particles which is in space, which is a problem for humans. There's radiation in there. So that was quite satisfying when I managed to at least do a little bit of that after all. Another question?
Yeah, so, a lot of very young children tend to be really interested and fascinated by space, but that interest kind of fades away as they grow older. So my question is then, why do you think that is, and what can we do to keep that spark going and to keep that fascination and curiosity?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that during the selection to become an astronaut. Why is it that kids are super interested, and then there is a bridge where some might be stay interested, but not that much, and then some grown-ups, but not that much either. And I think it's just this is my personal. You're more than welcome to provide other thoughts on that. But maybe it's because when you're a kid, it doesn't seem impossible. It seems like it's there. You can see it. Why could you not go there? And then you start thinking, I haven't been there, so of course I want to see what's out there. But then it becomes, then you grow up and it's not super likely to get there. It kind of fades away from your world, right? And I was thinking about that myself, because as a kid I was super interested, and that started to fade away. But then of course it come back now and then, enough to be here, I guess. And then, but now, having been up there, having seen how the whole space industry and the whole interest of space and the possibilities for space is growing so much, I think it's starting to become way more accessible. And having been there, it feels like it's so close. Right now it feels very close. And I know that's not rational, but it feels like I could go there tomorrow because I've been there. So it's not so I have a genuine feeling that my world have expanded, and that's a part of it. And also something that's interesting when I was up there thinking about it was that even the things that's super far away in space, when you look at a star, it's light years away, and I knew that, I had those feelings, but still it felt so much closer because I was in space, looking at the Earth, looking at space, and somehow that merged the feeling for it, so it became so much more accessible, why I want so many more people to go to space, to have that expansion of your perception of what's our world.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. And I know people have said to me before, oh, you're so lucky, you're an American, it's so much easier for you to go to space than, it's not really, it's not a real dream for a Swedish child. But I think that is, as Marcus was just saying, I think it's changing now more for everybody with more commercialization from space, with new companies that are providing different kinds of opportunities. Maybe not half a year on the space station, but getting to space in different ways, or maybe even a suborbital flight. So I think it is really exciting that we're at that sort of precipice when it's becoming more normal. Yeah. It's still not, right now you have to have a lot of money to get to space, but that was true about the aviation industry at one time too, and we're, moving forward. So I think it's really exciting to have more opportunities. Yeah,
and it's also not, of course, interesting in space and become an astronaut. Maybe I don't know if that's what you had in mind, the question, but general space is fascinating. It's interesting, and we want to use this as a kind of tool to guide young people into studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, right? STEM, right? So everybody cannot work with space, and everybody cannot need everyone to be an astronaut, but it would be great for us if more people go into the space, also industry and these things, to, bright new ideas who can drive the costs to space even more. I mean, down and all that. I mean, we have a great guy who's been really driving the cost down at Elon Musk, but there are many others also. So that's good for all of us on Earth, and I agree. The more we go to space, the better it will be.
Right. Now with Marcus, maybe it seems even more realistic for a Swedish child too.
Yeah.
Another Swede.
Yeah. Well, I was 22,000 applying, so there's enough of people who want to go still when they get older. Another question, if someone has.
So, you get this really unique view on Earth and how infinitesimally small us humans are. And I was just thinking to myself that, it must have some impact on how you view the world and how you view your lives. And maybe, has it even changed your purpose here on Earth?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people come back. I was quite an avid environmentalist before my flight, and most Swedes are much better than that, than a lot of people around the planet. But I think a lot of people do come back with a better appreciation of how special and fragile the planet is, and how we really do need to protect it. I think that's something that a lot of astronauts come back saying. I think the other thing for me was, like Krista was saying, you don't see the borders, all of these man-made constructs that we've imposed upon ourselves. And I was up there when I launched. It was September of 2019, so we didn't know what COVID was, and we watched it all happen from the space station. So that was very surreal to be watching it from space and be the only, at the time it was toward the end of my mission when things were getting really bad, there were only 3 of us up there. We were the only 3 humans that were not actually at risk of catching this disease that we knew nothing about. It was incredibly scary for everybody on the ground. So it felt very strange to be there for it. But it was one of these phenomenon that the entire planet was experiencing. One of these things that you realize we really are one human and one species, and we're all in it together. That was entirely true for COVID, the entire planet. Everybody was at risk. We were all in it together. So I think that's one of these important constructs to remember, that perspective that it gives you. So I really do wish that we could bring all the eyes of all the humans to space to look down on Earth and to gain that kind of perspective, that big picture about, like you said, how insignificant we are as humans, how we do really need to all work together to solve problems. And, maybe if we had a lot of world leaders up there, that would help them with some of their views too. But it's a very valuable perspective to have.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same, and now I only came back a little bit more than a week ago from space, right? So I haven't really manifested, so I don't know how it's going to change me or if it will change me.
You look different.
I look very different. But what I can say though is that the first day I came up there, I looked out and the world's beautiful and the Earth looks, and you can see this thin atmosphere. But it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 days into the mission, going down and see the same view, then all of a sudden it started to become emotional in a way that I did not foresee. I read about the overview effect, and I knew that astronauts had described this, but I didn't really expect that to be super strong to me, except from seeing and realizing or getting some of my already existing values reinforced or strengthened. But I have to say that the emotional reaction that I had after a few days, almost every time, sometimes when I had a task I focused on, I didn't see it, but almost every time I dove into the cupola and looked out on Earth, space, and atmosphere at the same time, was unexpected and very, very strong. So I guess we'll know in a couple of years whether that affects how I make my choices or feel. I don't know yet, it's too early.
I don't know what you thought, but one of the most emotional moments looking from space down, that's when you can see your home from space. And I don't know how it was with you. I mean, you had a few first flights with you in different countries also. Was it, wow, that's my country? Or these kind of reactions?
That was strong for everyone. Yeah. And you could see that. So when you got close to the time, all of a sudden you heard an alarm goes off, and some alarm goes off on their watch, on people's watches. And then someone came flying by into the cupola. And of course, that's when you get close to your country, right? So they wanted to, I want to see my home. Mm-hmm. But then after a while, after you've seen it a couple of times, people broaden out and, no, I want to see this part of the world. I want to see this part of the world. And all of a sudden it was the whole globe. So it really became one pretty small Earth, because as I say, it's 90 minutes and you've seen it all. So you stay there for 90 minutes, you have seen the full, you have seen 2 nights, 2 days, and it's fantastic.
And Jessica, then I can just ask you, so NASA's part in this, how if we take Artemis for as an example, what's the future for that? How is it looking, and how's it going, and what is your part in that in the future?
Yeah, so I think it's an incredibly exciting time for all of us as astronauts with the Artemis program developing and really becoming reality. You know, I think all of us as astronauts were thinking we're about to go back to the moon since you were selected way back, right?
When I was selected, and the then NASA Administrator Goldin talked to us after months, and he said, "One of you will be the first to step on Mars." That's still a bit away, but soon someone steps on the moon again. Yeah. That's good.
So I think it's been this thing that has always been there, and we talk about it a lot in the media, but as astronauts it seemed very far off still, right? Yeah. And so it has been different, I think, for me, when we launched Artemis 1. You know, of course it was delayed a lot and people were frustrated with delays and that kind of thing like we have in any government program. But then when that mission launched and it was so successful, that was when I thought, okay, wow, this is really happening now. You know, we have the capsule, we have the rocket, we have the successful flight, and the next launch of this vehicle, you know, my friends are going to be on. So it has become much more real. And, you know, I think we are experiencing more delays. It will take longer than we, you know, originally thought. But that's really not very surprising because it's, you know, the nature of any space or government program. But the cool thing is that we are making those steps, and everything that we're doing is getting us closer. So the Artemis 2 launch will happen in the fall of 2025, and then, you know, we'll see when the lander and the suits are ready for the landing missions. Maybe there end up being some other missions in between. We'll see how that all develops. But yeah, it's very exciting that, you know, I don't know yet if I'll be on one of those missions. Of course, I hope to be, but the fact is I know the astronauts that will be. All of us do. And so that's really exciting that it's our friends and colleagues that are going to be making those next steps back on the moon.
We hope you go.
Tack så mycket.
Yeah, great. But it is interesting, I mean, how sometimes frustrating, slow it can feel when you look forward and it's delayed again. But then when it starts to happen, suddenly, whoa, it's happening, and then it didn't seem so long anymore. I mean, like the space station, when that was also delayed, and now people have been living there for soon 24 years, right? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The space station now had people living there continuously for soon 24 years.
Yeah, and I think another big thing that the Artemis program will bring when we talk about these impacts that the space program has, of course, it's satisfying that human nature of exploration and a lot of different scientific benefits. You know, we're still learning every day from the samples that were brought back from the Apollo missions because we have new technology, so we can use different technologies and experiments to look at those samples differently. So that will, you know, with the Artemis program, we'll be going to totally different sites. We'll be going to the South Pole, so a lot of scientific value. But I think the third one that really brings the most impact back down to all of the people all over the planet are all of those sort of unanticipated benefits, you know, the spin-off kind of things. When you look back at the Apollo program, there was this huge investment of all of the resources in all of the STEM fields. So science, technology, engineering, math, there was this big outpouring of support and interest in those fields. And that has paid all of humanity dividends for the decades since then, with so many applications far, far outside the space sector. So I think we can anticipate that to happen again with the Artemis program. When you have these kinds of great moonshots, if you will, then you yield all of these other benefits as well that really pay off for the generations to come.
I want to bring up another aspect, and that is how the Artemis program actually has triggered a lot of activity going to the moon. Unmanned missions for sure, but I mean they are private companies. Some they get some kind of seed money from NASA, others are completely privately funded. So this Artemis program has triggered enormous amount of other activities going to the moon. And the more who goes there and the more moon landers which are built, the better technologies are developed, the cheaper it will be. So, I mean, it's an enormous good spin-off effect here.
And it's an international effort as well. You know, we have the European Space Agency building elements. We will have partner astronauts as well. There will be European astronauts on those missions. So it's another important aspect.
Yeah.
Then I have another question because all of you has been to the International Space Station. It was 10 years, somewhat, between Christer and Jessica, and you were there some years before, and Marcus now 5 years later. Is there some part, some mission, some task that you, except for the station in itself, that's been running for all of you, that you've been all three of you have been working on?
Maybe not one particular experiment, but I think like a genre of experiments. So, for example, protein crystal growth experiments have been going that whole time. Yeah. I don't know if you did any of those.
Crystal growth. Well, I didn't do much science. I built the station.
That's right. You were Christer was busy building
the medical part as well, right?
Medical experiments.
Bone health is one of them, which I'm in. I know NASA is doing equivalent. We're looking at the same things, and the medical effects, which is not only medical effect of going to space and what happens then, but also since you get in a lot of those processes, you get an accelerated process, which makes it so much more controlled data-wise. So you can look at how it was before, during the mission, and after the mission, and learn the process of how our body works and reconstructs or degrades. And by using that, you can create medicine knowledge and create treatments and things. That's a big benefit for everyone on Earth. So I think I would be surprised if we haven't been all in that.
And all of those experiments, the results build on each other. So
every astronaut, as long as they live, if they want, they are kind of getting brought back once a year to the Space Agency for medical checkups, to continue collecting the data and all that. You all try to gather as much information as you can.
And this continues exactly as Chris said. It continues for a long time. So I know my program
until
now.
You die, or if you decide you don't want to do it more.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for instance, my several years in the future now, I will also go to US to do specific testing, and that's not only we need a bigger N number, right? We need more astronauts doing that, and I think both NASA and ESA and other organizations try to use all astronauts for a lot of those data collections.
Right, I have a question here. What do you think is the biggest bottleneck to go to Mars?
Radiation.
Yeah, radiation. That's exactly what I would say as well.
I think it's the technology of the kind of spacecraft.
Yeah.
I think radiation is overstated.
Which part of the technology? Yeah. Okay, that depends on which consequence you accept.
Exactly. That's my.
Which part of the technology?
Well, you need a life support system, which definitely will not break, or you should be able to kind of repair it. I mean, you need so much fuel with you unless you start to produce it on Mars to also get back. I mean, okay, Elon Musk is designing a Starship spacecraft always for going that or coming back. Yes. But no, I don't think that radiation actually is the really biggest problem. I think it's technology.
Yeah, well, even for the Artemis program, we still have to demonstrate that the prop transfer, right? So you're saying the new technologies are part of this program right now too. They still have to demonstrate before we're ready to get in that vehicle. So you're right, there's a limitation. It's not an easy thing.
No. Yeah, that's right. A lot of the technology, though, there seems to be at least a plan, and at least you know a little bit of what you want to try. Maybe you need to demo it and develop it to be feasible and really doable. But in some of the parts, it feels like we're still grasping for how to actually do it when it comes to it. Yeah. Unless you just take the consequence.
That's what That's what it's a big risk anyhow, so add on the risk to get cancer. Yeah. No, but just look at, I mean, not even the Mars sample return mission. Are we getting together now? It's too much expensive and extremely complicated kind of architecture to build that mission. I wonder if it will happen. Maybe it makes more sense, and humans there and grab stuff and come back, like the Apollo program.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, are you ready to go?
We've got a good crew right here. Diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All right, that's good. And last question?
So you've all been to the International Space Station, as we know, but we're seeing some new possible space stations and a big shift in that area, and also maybe the space station in the ISS won't be around forever, as we're seeing. What do you, first of all, think that the future of life in low or medium Earth orbit will look like, and what sort of emotions does it bring to you, thinking that what's been your home might not be around there forever?
think one of the things that we're doing right now with the ISS is we are moving towards that commercialization. So there have been experiments and payloads that have been flying that are more from that commercial sector, and then eventually we'll be handing over control of the space station. There'll be new modules that Axiom's building. Maybe Marcus wants to talk a little bit about that. So we still will have this presence in low Earth orbit, but I think from the NASA perspective, it's better to have somebody else handling that and doing that in the commercial sector, because we don't have limitless resources. So we want to use the resources that we have to go for those next exploration steps. So returning to the moon with the Artemis program, eventually going to Mars. And if we have the commercial sector involved, then we have more resources to do those things.
I think that's exactly, it's really important, I think, to utilize all capacities of the commercial as well to create that normality and to utilize the low Earth orbit with the space station. I think looking at Axiom and others trying to do this, it will shift a little bit more maybe towards on-orbit manufacturing and really utilizing that microgravity possibilities, everything we can do when it comes to develop new materials, which will be both for space but mostly probably for Earth, and manufacturing new medicines or materials that we know or components that we know, but in a new way or where we utilize microgravity. So I think it might shift towards that. And I also know, looking at the Axiom station, where they take into account things that you want to develop on ISS, and then utilize that and make that happen on a new station. And that plan is it seems to be a pretty robust plan. So that's I'm expecting that to happen. And there are many other players out there that really wants to make this happen, which is great, because then you get the competition and you also get someone comes up with something, and then the other people see that and they follow along, and then we're bringing that development going forward.
So what about if all you guys come up here behind us and we have a group photo? Will be one group photo which will be shared somehow.
Which camera?
That camera. Tack så ni ha.
All right. Tack så mycket.
Tack.